Hey, I'm here in central Pennsylvania at the Swigart Museum. This is actually America's oldest car museum. The collection was started around 1920. They built the museum in 1957, and they've been operating ever since. I'm actually never been here. I've never actually heard of it until I was driving through. So I'm excited to go check it out. Let's go see what they have. Well, let's start things off with this car right here, which some of you may already recognize as a Tucker. Remember, I just saw 3 Tuckers over at the AACA Museum in an earlier video, including the very first production Tucker, serial number 001. Well, this one is actually before that. This is the Tucker prototype that was used in the unveiling in 1947. This Tucker is called the Tin Goose, and it's serial number 000. So when the Tucker had his great press unveiling, this is the actual car that was used. So this is tomorrow's car today. Look at that space-age dash. Here is this very car here in 1947, surrounded by press and public. Let's take a little closer look at that dash. This is really unlike any other car I've seen, just very advanced. It looks like you're piloting some kind of an airplane or rocket ship. The museum has another Tucker. This is Tucker number 13. And this is a difference from the prototype in that it has rear suicide doors and turn signals, different engine, and a few other things that are different than the prototype. This car was used in the movie Tucker, A Man and His Dream, and was actually damaged during that movie and had to undergo a restoration afterwards. Jeff Bridges used an autographed picture of himself as payment for using the car in the movie, which must be nice. But that's not the only movie car that the museum has. Here are 2 Herbie the Love Bugs. The museum actually owns 3. This first one here was the main car in the second movie, Herbie Rides Again. And the other one over here was from the Disney Herbie on Ice show. The museum actually has a very large collection, much larger than the museum can hold, about 150 cars, I understand. So if you come to visit, you might see a different mix of cars out on the floor than what I'm showing here, because my understanding is that they're constantly sort of rotating the collection around. But anyway, here are 2 Volkswagens from various Herbie the Love Bug incarnations. Let's take a quick look at some of the other cars on display. Here's a 1905 Rambler. A Rambler would eventually be bought out by Nash, and Nash would later revive the Rambler name in 1950 as the Nash Rambler. Here's a 1911 Maxwell. This features electric headlights, which were very advanced for the time. Next to that, we have a 1910 Buick Toy Tanu. The Toy Tanu feature means that the entire back seats can be unbolted and set aside so that this thing can be used as a Roadster. Here's a 1909 Overland. John Willys had taken over the company just 1 year prior to this, and as most of you know, Willys Overland then went on to become a major player in the auto industry. Who was not a major player was Mora, unfortunately. This 1909 Mora is only one of 2 examples left in existence. The company was around from 1906 to 1910, but unfortunately only 2 cars have survived. Speaking of only 2 of a kind, this next one is interesting. This is a 1908 Studebaker electric bus. Tiller driven, you can see the tiller there. Anyway, this is one of 2 of these that were ever built. They were ordered by the federal government to run between the Capitol and the old Senate building in a tunnel. So those were a subway bus. It was replaced in 1912 with a monorail. If you can believe that. It's just an interesting car here. Like I said, only 2 of these in existence, and ran exclusively underground in Washington, D.C. to ferry senators back and forth between the Capitol and Old Senate Building. Over in this line, we have a 1913 Ford Model T. followed by a 1912 Detroit Electric. I always like early electric cars, and I'm going to point them out every time I see them. They're just super cool with the tiller steering. Speaking of tiller steering, here is a 1911 Sears. That's the same Sears as the catalog company. You could order these things through the Sears catalog. They didn't have any sort of a actual dealer network. These were all catalog purchased. So they're cool. And here on the end, we have a 1910 brush. And as I like to point out, the brush has a wooden front axle. Also, believe it or not, a wooden frame underneath there. Here is a 1914 Cadillac engine. This is a cutaway engine that was actually used by Cadillac for auto show demonstration purposes. Just a neat engine with copper cooling jacket. Next up, we have a 1913 Stanley Steamer. I always like steamer cars because as a driver of just a normal car, all of the weird little gauges and dials all seem very exotic to me. The Stanley Steamer actually ran on kerosene and used gasoline just for the pilot and used about a gallon of water per mile. Over behind this Model T is a 1916 Scripps Booth. Scripps Booth was a luxury brand that was started in 1913 before it was originally bought out by General Motors and discontinued in 1922. This particular one was made for the tennis star Eleanor Sears to her exact specifications. So this is a unique automobile with an open driver's compartment. Here's a picture of Jay Leno sitting in this car. Museum staff pointed out that he made an attempt to buy it, but was turned down. Better luck next time, Jay. Next door, we've got another town car with the separate chauffeur area. This is another fully custom, one-of-a-kind car. In this case, it made in 1919 by Brewster for Tommy Manville. He's the guy from John's Manville. That's that guy. He was single in the 1920s and used this as his courting car. So this car was designed to impress the ladies. Over next to it, we have another car from 1919. This is a Pierce Arrow. This was one of America's premier luxury brands, and they operated from 1901 up to 1938. Very nice car. 1951 Studebaker Champion. This is what people refer to as the bullet nose design. They used this for several years. It's really an aircraft-inspired look. I've always kind of liked these things. They're very distinctive and don't really look like anything else on the road. This one's a convertible. I'd really like to see it with the top down. This next car is fun. This is a 1960 Fiat Jolly. What this is this is basically a Fiat 500 that has been modified by Ghia. They only made about 650 of these. What you're looking at here are, in fact, wicker seats, no doors at all. You have the Surrey top with the fringe. What these were for was rich people tooling around the beach areas in the Mediterranean. The idea is that you keep one of these on your yacht and use it when you make port. Supposedly only about 100 of these have survived. This next one is a 1920 Carroll. Carroll operated in Lorain, Ohio from 1920 to 1923, and this is the only surviving example. It's an interesting car. You can see here that the front radiator sits well behind the front axle, giving it sort of a distinctive look. The top is interesting too. This is a permanent California top. It looks like a convertible from a distance, but really this is part of the car and doesn't really come off. For inclement weather, you had side curtains you could put on there. You had fold-down jump seats to give you third-row seating because this is actually a fairly large touring car. It's really neat to see because it's different and it's the only one left. Speaking of only one, here is a 1936 Duesenberg Gentleman's Roadster. This is a prototype that never really saw wide production. So this is the only one. This used the Auburn Speedster body with Duesenberg hood and front end, also some cord parts in there. This has a V12 engine, a very powerful sort of a thing, but not what the world was looking for in 1936, apparently. This particular example was originally owned by the actor Jackie Coogan. You may know him better because later on he went on to play Uncle Fester on The Addams Family. Although at the time he was driving this, he was actually married to Betty Grable. Yeah, that Betty Grable. Anyway, really nice car. Also from the Auburn Cord Duesenberg family of cars is this 1937 Cord 812. This is a fantastically styled and engineered car. This is a front-wheel drive car, and in addition to the obviously sleek styling, what you might not notice is unlike other cars of the 30s, this has no visible hood ornament. Also, there are no running boards, the headlights are hidden, and there are no visible door handles. Let's give you some styling whiplash here. See that wooden axle? If you've been paying attention to my videos, you should know by now that we are dealing with a brush. This is a 1908 brush. This is unrestored and largely original. The story here is that the original owner had used this as part of his hide business, where he would buy hides from local farmers and then salt the hides, and then use this car to take them to the tannery, where he would pile them up on the seats and on the fenders. And the salt from the tanned hides is why we have patch plates here on the back and on the fenders. So it's kind of an interesting story. It's always nice to see original cars, especially original cars that have stories. The museum is more than just cars. They have a lot of display cases in their lobby and throughout the museum full of automobilia or automotive-related things, as well as a lot of vintage toys that are always interesting to see. They actually have a collection of vintage Fisher-Price things, but there's a lot of interesting things here. I was really taken by this turn-of-the-century Renault salesman's kit. We have all these different bodies that the salesman could show you and then fit them onto this little Renault chassis so that you could see what all these body styles look like, because you can't really look at an actual car. This is the only one of these left in existence, and it's super cool. I literally just saw one of these for sale at Hershey, and I didn't know what it was called, and I couldn't make out the manufacturer's name. It's a tally-ho horn. I'll have to file that information away for future reference. Anyway, they have a great collection of horns here. Well, that was the Swigart Museum. Excuse me, it's very windy out here. Anyway, I was really super impressed. It's kind of a small building, but it really packs a punch. They've got a lot of cars in a small space, and the quality of the cars they have is just outstanding. This museum is well worth the side trip. It's just a great museum. Can't say enough great things about it. Sorry about the wind. Anyway, we're going to have some more videos later. Be sure to like and to subscribe, and I look forward to the next adventure with you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.